of 5 children born to Richard and Emma Lewis, who grew up in Mississippi, one in Louisville, my mom, my dad in Meridian, who fell in love at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska, who went dancing one night to I Found My Thrill on Blueberry Hill, found a thrill, got pregnant, conceived me, I'm a preconceived notion, and then got married a month before I was born and had me. Thank God that they decided to keep me, because then I was lucky to have 4 siblings to come after me and 1 half-brother ahead of me, and 2 parents who, though were imperfect, were fierce lovers. My very first fierce lovers. So I'm going to be talking over the weekend about this book I wrote that turned out to be more memoir than I thought it was going to be, but the lessons that I learned at their feet, in their arms, in crisis times, in funky times, in crazy times, in my family and in the world and in the church, that I think helped me to find a religion that I can deeply believe in. And that religion is love. I mean, just to paraphrase my rabbi, Jesus, love is the only way, the only truth, and the only life. And no one will come to God, the Father, Mother, they, without love. So let me tell you a little bit about what gets me to this place, to write a book called Fierce Love. This subtitle is so mouthy, but let me say it slowly. Fierce love, a bold path to ferocious courage and rule-breaking kindness that can heal the world. I have found this love in relationship to my siblings and my mom and dad, to my beautiful husband, John, to my amazing church community, and to you. It is everywhere. You all know what it feels like, what it tastes like, what it looks like. So I wrote a book in nine chapters. The first section of the book about loving yourself. The second section of the book about loving your posse, your people, your folks. And the third section about loving the world. And tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about loving yourself. So, good girls don't get taught to love themselves. Good girls get taught to be sacrificial, to cook the Thanksgiving dinner and wash the dishes, and put the dishes away, and put their little brothers to sleep, and wake up the next morning and cook for all the people in the house. Good girls are taught that to think about yourself is narcissistic, to think about yourself as selfish, and that the very best way for you to show that you are godly is to just put it all out there and empty yourself. And when you empty yourself, when you're fully depleted, when you're absolutely butt-ass dragging, tired, you better not have sex. Because girls are taught that too. Come on, somebody. Every date, when I started dating that I went on, my mommy would put a $5 bill in my hand to make sure that I could get home if the man got crazy, and she'd kiss me on both of my cheeks and say, "Now, baby, don't forget to keep your panties up and your dress down." Because that was the most important rule in the Bible for the girls, was to make sure that you were a virgin. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? All right. My mom and dad just gave me what they got. They introduced me to the God that they learned about, the one that they loved, the one that they were given by their parents, which was the one given to their parents by their parents, which was the one given to their parents by the people who enslaved them, which was the one that was more about staying tucked in and good and tight and wrapped up, as opposed to liberation and free. That's the God I got. I got the God of the no, or the don't no more. That's what I really love to say. The God of the don't no more. Don't drink no more, don't smoke no more, don't have sex no more, don't cuss no more, right? Don't gamble no more, but don't no more God. And it's understandable, really, when you think about it, because my mom's mom would have been kidnapped off the shores of Western Africa and brought on a ship across the Atlantic Ocean through the Middle Passage. And whatever it is that was the Western African spirituality, whatever it was that was working inside their lives to make them survive, got kind of syncretized with a kind of Christianity. And some of it was about freedom, but a lot of it was about staying alive, staying safe. That's all it was. And so we passed that down, right? We pass it down. So I got the Don't Know More God from my mom and dad, who loved me, and who were complicated and gave me lots of theologies that I needed to unbraid or to braid again for myself. And though I could pick on them a bit about their God and how silly that God was, or childlike that God was, or not helpful to me that God was, I also have to thank them for the pieces of the God thing that sustained my life and made me who I am. I'm 7 years old in Seventh Presbyterian Church, with about 50 pews, and my mom and dad and us, all 6 of us, sat on the 4th pew. It is the very first time that I'm going to get to take communion. I'm 7, and because we're Presbyterian, I don't have to do any work to take communion. I just need my mom and dad to vouch for me to take communion. I feel like such a big girl. I can't believe I get to do it. My dad is an elder. He's passing out the elements. My mom has sung in the choir. She's now sitting next to me, smelling like Ultra Sheen and Winsong. You know what I'm talking about? With a little Jergens lotion underneath. Cherry, vanilla, bergamot, all the things. And she's the most beautiful person in the world to me. And my dad passes the bread, and that comes on a golden plate. Ooh, you love those golden plates when you're little. And the cubes have been pre-cut. And I take a bite of that yeasty Hawaiian bread, the kind that they like to put the spinach dip in now. And Mommy leans over and says, this bread means God will always love you. What? It tastes this good, and it means God will always love me. I'm hooked. I'm falling in love with God. I always liked those little miniatures. My grandmother had a house full of miniature cows and cats and dogs and all kinds of little things you couldn't touch. Dust catchers, but they were cute and little. So when that little cup came by, and the Welch's grape juice that was kind of like Kool-Aid, all right? And I took the sip of the little grape juice, and Mommy leaned in and said, this cup means God will never leave you. What? My tongue is purple and God will never leave me? I'm smitten. I don't know yet about what it means to be called to ministry, but I'm feeling something, guys. I'm being pulled into this something, and I can't describe it. I'm like, oh, I'm so in love with it. Like, I teach Sunday school when I'm 8 to the little kids. I'm singing in the choir. We're singing like hair and gospel music and a little R&B at church. Crazy people. Oh, that's a little bit like middle. Anyway, I'm so in love with the place. It's just all the goodness. I feel so on fire for something that will take me decades to describe. But I'm beginning a journey toward the thing I'm still looking for, which is a space of non-judgment, of pure love, of acceptance, of just openness and freedom. And it's not enough for it to be for me. I need it for everybody. I need it for the Chinese girl in the orphanage. I need it for the girl in the hijab in Pakistan. I need it for the boy in the hijab. I need it for all the people at the board. I just need it. That's what I want. So I get this little piece from Mom and Dad, and it's like, okay, God will always love me. God will never leave me. That's the beginning of a self-love concept. And then, Mommy's Beatitudes, Mommy's Bible. Love God with everything you have. Love your neighbor as yourself. And don't ever lie. Like, a liar will not tarry in his sight. What? I didn't know what the word tarry was, but I knew that lying was going to get your behind whipped. So it was like, don't lie, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and love your neighbor as yourself. This was my little 5 commandments, I guess, growing up. When I was 5 years old, and the mommy and daddy dyad had taught me some things about love, I was in kindergarten in an all-white space, in an Air Force base, and a little girl named Lisa rocked my world. It was me and the 2 Tommies, one blonde, one redhead, cute little white boys, and Jacqui. You know, just handling our business in kindergarten. Kind of having a menage a trois, as little children will, like taking your lunch buckets to school, taking naps to each other, very innocent but also tight. And then Lisa came from Mississippi and informed me that I was the N-word and that I got chocolate milk from my mother's breast. So this was like, right into the beautifulness of life. You're the N-word and you get chocolate milk from your mother's breast. One was nasty, both were nasty. I was really messed up by that. My mother, faithful chick that she was, prayed with me and said, Jacqui, that's so silly that white people think that black people are not as good as them. That's so silly, she said. And then she prayed with me. And I prayed, God, no matter what anybody looks like, please let it be that they will always feel loved. That was my big child story. My dad was the Air Force captain and demanded an apology. Reparations, 1964, from my dad. So there was a sense of religious, faithful response and a social justice response, and that story shapes my activism and my faith. I'm talking about learning how to love myself. The first practice in my book is you gotta love yourself. All of the world's major religions say something about love your neighbor as yourself, right? Do unto others as you have them do unto you. Don't withhold from someone that which you need for yourself. One religion says, don't break anyone else's heart. It's so sweet. But this idea of loving your neighbor as yourself cannot happen if you don't love yourself. Remember how I started with good girls don't love themselves? How selfish that is? How tangy that is? How tart that is? How are you going to love the world when you don't love yourself? One day my husband John said, I think the real problem is that people are actually following the scripture. They are loving each other as they love themselves. They don't love themselves, so they're not loving each other. They don't love themselves, so they're hating on each other. There's a hole in their soul where love should be. So they're angry, they're resentful, they're bitter, they're jealous, they're stank. Stank is a theological word. Do you feel it? Like stank, right? Because they don't love themselves. And they take their unloving selves to the boardroom, to the grocery line, right? To the subway. And any opportunity to shit on somebody, I just thought I'd let you know that good girls can say shit. Any opportunity to mess on somebody, to hurt somebody, to foul up somebody else's day, they'll do because they do not love themselves. Practice 1, we have to love ourselves unconditionally. As difficult as it is, as sometimes impossible as it might be, how do we put ourselves on a path to look into our stories and find some remembrance, some opportunity? Remember when? Communion. God loves you. We'll never leave you. Racism is silly. Let's pray for everybody. Let's go demand. There are things in our lives that if we just open them up and look at these stories deeply, we'll find a reason that proof texts how absolutely badass, fantastic, made in the image of God we are. And that it actually mocks God not to love what God made. We have to love ourselves unconditionally. And the second thing that I work on this book is about telling the truth, because the truth will actually set us free. So, You actually can't love the self you don't know. You actually can't love the patina, the persona, the falseness. Good girls mobilize a false personality. How you doing? Fine. Is everything okay? Sure. Are you angry? No. Do you feel lust? Absolutely not. Are you pissed off at your parents? No. We are taught so early to fake out the people around us. And some of us actually have parenting that really only affords that kind of falseness. I'm a psychologist. We talk about the kind of containers that we're born in or the environments we're born in. If an environment is full of, let's say, a narcissistic parent or an empty parent, an absent parent, if you're born poor, on the border, if there's not enough goodness in your life to reassure you that you can cry and someone will come, you're hungry and you'll be fed, pretty soon the young developing child does not attune to themselves, but attunes to the outside environment. And the outside environment impinges their ability to be appropriately narcissistic. Are you with me? A baby has to be able to go, I'm hungry! And somebody needs to come. And if it happens right, they go, I'm magic, I did it, I cried, it came, the bottle, and they have this wonderful sense of self that happens because they were able to get what they need. When we don't give children what we don't need, when parents don't have enough safety support, when people don't have enough love around them, the child is impinged, and the child doesn't know how to be true, and the child grows up lying to themselves, lying to the world, pretending that they're not real, and they're dead inside instead of alive inside. The truth that sets us free is the truth that we get to live because the whole world collaborates on us. Being able to be true and ask for stuff and get it. Are you with me?
Good.
That's the kind of truth that sets you free. And it begins with the kind of basic brain ability to just say, I'm lonely, I'm scared, I'm afraid, I'm lost, help me, I'm needy, I'm needy. Can needy be okay? I'm sad. These kinds of truths liberate us to love ourselves and to love our neighbor. Finally, in that first section, I talk about traveling lightly, like unloading your stuff. It's exhausting to drag our lives around with us, full of all the things that we don't want to be honest about. See how all these things build on each other? I tell you a beautiful story about my dad, who taught me how to be an activist. But I also could tell you a story about the first time I sassed my dad, and I was so shockingly sassy that he knocked me off a dining room chair. Not because he doesn't love me, but because he was a person who learned how to be violent. The same man who taught me how to be an activist, who woke up every day and took me to everywhere I needed to go, the same man who always came home and always fed us and always celebrated us, also is a man with a temper, who got a temper from being a boy with a father who was angry, right? Like, all of that stuff. That good, shiny, I love you, Jacqui, daddy is in me, the angry daddy, knock you off the chairs, inside me. His story is my story, all of that's in me. But if I'm not honest with myself, if I don't take care to explore those tragedies, hard things in my life, I drag them around with me like a ton of bricks, how free am I to be real? How free am I to love myself? How free am I to love other people? We've got to also just make a spiritual practice of unloading our burdens. You don't have to have a therapist to unload your burden, but it's cool. It's good. They just sit there and listen and they get paid. It's awesome. Try it. But it also could be a really good friend, or a spiritual director, or your honey. My poor man, free counseling all the time. Call John, 1-800-CALL John for free therapy. But there is something really important, friends, about not pretending that something that wounded us isn't in there, carving away at our soul, causing us to have cancer, overeat, overdrink, cuss, craziness, you know. The way we get to be the people who can love the people is to love ourselves enough to pay attention to what's inside and know that there's good stuff in there and there's funky stuff in there, and the funky stuff also have lessons. And the stuff that has lessons for you, the lessons come because we peel it open and we look at it and we examine it and we think about it honestly. And we don't pretend, we don't lie to ourselves about what has happened to ourselves. So the first part of these 9 steps towards fierce love is to love yourself unconditionally, which means telling the truth all the time, to yourself and to others. And it also means unloading your burden, because you take time to take your trunk load of stuff, try to get it down to a suitcase, maybe to a backpack, pretty soon it's a fanny pack, pretty soon it's a skinny purse. But because we know that we all got stuff, the stuff has lessons. We look at it, we examine it, we breathe on it, we try to forgive some of it, and we try to let it go, let it go. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in a childhood movie, okay? This is the work we're called to do, fierce lovers, is to make ourselves our first love object. There's only one you. You're exactly the way you're supposed to be. And you only get to the very best you by being honest, by dropping some of that stuff, let it go, and keep it moving toward tomorrow, when we'll talk some more. Thank you.